better to be feared than loved. Machiavelli's warning: imagine you're standing on a cliff, looking down at a kingdom that could be yours. You've fought for it, you've sacrificed, you've made it to the top. But now the real question begins: not how to gain power, but how to keep it. The people below are watching. Some admire you, some resent you. You feel their eyes, their expectations, their hidden doubts. And you ask yourself the question that Machiavelli dared to answer 5 centuries ago: is it better to be feared than loved? Right now in your life, in your relationships, in your career, this question is more relevant than ever. Because whether you realize it or not, every day you're choosing between love and fear. Every time you lead, every time you speak, every time you make a decision that affects others, you are shaping how they see you. But what is the smarter strategy? What keeps you secure? What protects your future? Machiavelli's answer was clear: if you can't be both, it's better to be feared. To many, that sounds cold, ruthless, even evil. But what if he was right? What if love is fragile and fleeting, while fear is durable and dependable? What if the people who rise the highest and stay there are the ones who understand the mechanics of fear and wield it with precision? What if the real danger isn't being feared, but being too loved?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's break this open. Love is beautiful, yes. But it's soft. It's conditional. People love you when you serve their interests, when you make them feel good, when you don't contradict their values. But the moment you stop fulfilling their needs, that love can evaporate. Think about all the celebrities or leaders who were adored until they weren't. One mistake, one scandal, one opinion out of step, and the love turns to hatred. Because love in the public sphere is rarely deep. It's transactional, emotional, volatile. Fear, on the other hand, is consistent. It doesn't depend on mood. It doesn't require admiration. It doesn't vanish in the face of controversy. Fear anchors power. It creates a buffer between you and the chaos of public opinion. Machiavelli wasn't saying be cruel for its own sake. He was saying understand human nature. People are unpredictable, self-interested, easily swayed. Fear, when used wisely, not abusively, can create stability. It can protect you from betrayal. It can prevent others from taking advantage of your goodwill. Now, here's where this gets personal. You're not a Renaissance prince. You're not ruling a kingdom. But you are leading something: your life, your work, your relationships. And in those spaces, are you relying too much on being liked? But are you sacrificing your authority, your vision, your truth just to stay loved? Because if so, you're playing a dangerous game. People may like you, but they won't respect you. They may praise you, but they won't follow you when things get hard. And when you finally need to make a tough call, they'll turn on you. Why? Because you taught them that keeping their love was your highest priority. You gave them power over you. This is what Machiavelli was warning us about. But not just political leaders, but all of us. He was saying, don't build your power on affection alone. It's too unstable. It puts you at the mercy of others. But build it on something firmer, on discipline, on clarity, on the ability to act decisively even when people don't like it. That doesn't mean be a tyrant. It means be someone who can stand alone when necessary. Someone who can command, not just charm. someone who is willing to be misunderstood in the short term to be effective in the long term. Let's go deeper. Why do we crave love over fear? Because love feels good. It feeds our ego. It reassures us. It makes us feel safe. But that desire to be loved can become a trap. But it can make us weak. It can make us compromise when we shouldn't. It can make us say yes when we should say no. And worst of all, it can make us dependent on the applause, the approval, the acceptance of others. That's not strength. That's vulnerability disguised as virtue. Fear, in contrast, doesn't feel as good, but it gives you something more lasting. It gives you control. Not control over others in a manipulative way, but control over your position, your direction, your strategy. When people fear disappointing you, they respect your time. When they fear crossing your boundaries, they take you seriously. When they fear the consequences of betrayal, they think twice. That's not abuse. That's structure. And structure is what holds power in place when emotions fade. So I'll ask you something hard. Are you too afraid of being feared? Have you confused being liked with being effective? Are you avoiding conflict because you think it will cost you love when in reality it might win you respect? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary. Because the truth is, if you want to lead anything, your life, your team, your future, you have to decide what matters more, being loved or being unshakable. The architecture of power, why respect outlasts affection, and how to build it. Power is not a feeling. It's not popularity. It's not even dominance. Power is structure, an invisible architecture of influence, boundaries, and perception. And if you want it to last, you can't build it on affection alone. Love is soft clay, rich, warm, adaptable, but it crumbles under pressure. Respect, on the other hand, is stone. It's heavy. It's hard to shape. But once it's in place, it doesn't move. When Machiavelli said it is better to be feared than loved, he wasn't glorifying fear for its own sake. He was diagnosing the hidden mechanics of stability. He was saying, if you want to build something that endures, whether it's a nation, a business, or your personal legacy, you need respect more than love. Love can be a bonus, a beautiful ornament on top. But respect, that's the foundation. Think about someone you love deeply but don't respect. Maybe you admire their warmth, their kindness, their loyalty, but you wouldn't follow them into battle. You wouldn't trust them in a crisis. Now think about someone you respect but don't necessarily love. Maybe they're tough, distant, even cold, but when they speak, you listen. When they lead, you follow. That's the difference. Love is emotional. Respect is structural. So how do we build respect? Not through fear-mongering or intimidation. That's insecurity in disguise. Real respect is earned through consistency, boundaries, and the courage to act alone when necessary. It comes from doing what's right, not what's popular. From making hard decisions when it would be easier to stay silent. From protecting your vision even when it costs you approval. Respect is born the moment people realize you're not easily swayed, that you don't need their validation to act, and that you're led by principle, not applause. And here's the paradox: once people respect you, their love, if it comes, means more. It's not based on your ability to please them. It's based on who you are when it's hardest to be. But here's where most of us go wrong. We chase love first, thinking respect will follow. We try to be agreeable, accommodating, always available. We say yes to everything so no one's feelings get hurt. And in the process, we dilute our power. We become liked, maybe even adored, but not followed, not trusted in crisis. Because people sense, even unconsciously, that we'll bend under pressure. You've probably done this. We all have. You avoid setting boundaries because you're afraid of disappointing others. You sugarcoat your truth because you don't want to seem harsh. You give second, third, fourth chances because you want to be seen as compassionate. But what does that compassion cost you? Your time? Your energy? Your self-respect? Machiavelli's warning wasn't about cruelty, it was about clarity. But he was saying, establish your structure before you extend your softness. Make it clear where you stand, what you'll tolerate, and what you won't. Then, if you offer love, kindness, generosity, it's seen as a gift, not a weakness. And that's the key. When love comes from someone who doesn't need to be loved, it has weight. It has meaning. It's not manipulation or insecurity, it's choice. Let's bring this to your life. In your relationships, are you respected? Or are you just liked? At work, do people know your boundaries or do they walk over them because you're nice? In your friendships, do you speak your mind or do you shrink to keep the peace? These are not surface-level questions. They go to the root of how we define ourselves. Because if your identity is built on being lovable, then every confrontation feels like a threat. But if your identity is built on being clear, every confrontation becomes a test of truth. And what happens when people test you? That's where the foundation shows. If you crack, if you fold, if you backpedal, then they learn. They learn that your structure is flexible, but that your lines are negotiable, that your power is more image than substance. But if you hold, if you stay grounded, even when it costs you approval, then you become something rare, someone who can't be easily moved, someone who can be loved and respected, but doesn't need either to stay strong. So I ask you, are you building your legacy on stone or on clay? Are you cultivating a structure that can withstand storms or just a facade that looks good in the sun? Because sooner or later, the storm comes, and the crisis hits, the applause fades, and in that moment, it won't be your charm that saves you. It'll be your architecture, the respect you built when no one was watching, the boundaries you upheld when it would have been easier to let them slide, the principles you stood on when it would have been safer to sit down. That's what Machiavelli meant. Not that fear is greater than love, but that structure is greater than sentiment. That the ones who last are not the ones who are most adored, but the ones who are most anchored. The fear factor, why being misunderstood may be the price of true power. There's a cost to being powerful that no one talks about. It's not just hard decisions, it's not just pressure or responsibility. The true cost, the one that cuts the deepest, is being misunderstood. Because when you choose strength over popularity, clarity over comfort, and structure over sentiment, people won't always get it. They'll question your motives. They'll call you cold, harsh, distant. And the temptation in that moment, the very human temptation, is to soften, to explain, to defend yourself. But here's the truth. Power doesn't explain itself. If it has to, it loses its edge. And sometimes You have to be willing to be the villain in someone else's story to stay true to your own. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. His entire philosophy is a study of the cost of power, not just how to get it, but how to endure the loneliness it brings. Because when you stop needing to be loved, you start making decisions that others won't be ready for. You start acting on principles, not popularity. And that makes people uncomfortable. They don't know where to place you. You're not fitting neatly into the categories of nice or agreeable or harmless. You're operating from a different logic, the logic of effectiveness, of legacy, of truth. And that, to the average person, looks like danger. So they fear you, or worse, they misjudge you. But here's the paradox. That fear is exactly what protects you. Because people don't cross what they don't understand. They don't challenge what feels unshakable. But when you stop over-explaining and start embodying your values, you become a kind of mystery. And mystery is power. It creates space. It commands attention. It makes people think twice before they test your limits. But now pause. Think about your own life. Have you ever felt the sting of being misunderstood just because you stood your ground? Maybe you said no when everyone expected a yes. Maybe you walked away from something toxic and people said you were cold. Maybe you set a boundary and they called you arrogant. That pain you felt, that isolation, that's the price. But it's also the proof that you're walking a different path. A path that's not built on consensus, but on clarity. Because clarity is rare. Most people live in emotional fog, saying what others want to hear, doing what feels good in the moment, avoiding conflict like it's poison. But when you show up with clarity, with a sharp, unapologetic sense of who you are, you break the pattern. You force people to confront their own uncertainty. And they won't always thank you for that. They might lash out. They might pull away. But deep down, they remember you because you're not forgettable. You're not bendable. You're real. And this is where fear becomes misunderstood. It's not about tyranny. It's not about causing pain. It's about commanding space. It's about being so grounded in your values that people have to recalibrate when they're around you. They speak more carefully. They act more intentionally. But not because you threaten them, but because your presence demands it. That's not manipulation. That's integrity with weight. But here's where it gets hard. To wield that kind of presence, you have to be okay with not being liked. You have to be okay with being called things you're not: mean, distant, controlling, because you won't play into the emotional games others expect. You won't let guilt or pressure or sentimentality steer the ship. And that makes you dangerous because you can't be emotionally blackmailed. You're not addicted to praise. You're not chasing consensus. You're walking your own line. Now ask yourself, how much of your life have you spent trying to be understood by people who have no interest in seeing you clearly? How much energy have you wasted explaining your boundaries, justifying your standards, defending your decisions to those who never respected the weight of your choices? That's not power. That's performance. And it keeps you small. Machiavelli's warning wasn't just about the politics of fear. It was about the psychology of power. He was telling us that leadership, true leadership, requires detachment, not from people, but from their approval. With that, to make real change, to build something lasting, to hold your ground when the winds shift, You have to stop being available for every opinion. You have to stop diluting your message so it can be swallowed easily. But you have to stop compromising your truth just to avoid discomfort. Because the moment you do, you become ordinary, safe, predictable, and power never lives in the predictable. So I'll ask you something that might change how you see your entire life. Are you willing to be feared if it means being free? Not feared because you hurt people, feared because you stand tall, because you don't chase love, because your no is final, because your direction is set, because your soul is not for rent. That kind of fear is not a threat to others, it's a mirror. It reflects their own lack of structure, and some will hate you for it. But others, some quietly, some openly, will respect you. They will learn from you. They will follow you. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. That is what it means to live Machiavelli's warning, not to become cruel, but to become clear, to know that the price of real power is being misread, but the reward is being unbreakable. Legacy over likability, why the people who change the world are rarely the most loved in the quiet moments before history is written. The people who make the biggest impact are often the least adored. That's the final truth Machiavelli forces us to confront. If you want to leave a legacy, you have to be willing to sacrifice likability. Not because being disliked is noble, but because real change, deep, structural, uncomfortable change rarely comes from those who are trying to be liked. It comes from those who are willing to be remembered more than they are willing to be accepted. We've been conditioned to think that the highest form of success is admiration. That if people love us, we must be doing something right. But admiration is cheap. It can be bought with charisma, with charm, with the right words at the right time. Legacy, on the other hand, is expensive. It demands that you say the hard things, do the unpopular things, and walk the lonely roads. It demands that you become someone who is not always easy to agree with, but impossible to ignore. Look at any person in history who reshaped the world. They were criticized, feared, often hated in their time. Socrates was sentenced to death. Galileo was silenced. Mandela was imprisoned. Even the visionaries of today, those who disrupt industries, challenge norms, or tell inconvenient truths, are often ridiculed before they are revered. Why? Because they threaten comfort, and people cling to comfort like it's oxygen. But here's the twist. Time has a way of vindicating clarity. The world may not love you now, but if your actions are rooted in truth and principle, it will remember you. And that memory, that legacy, is more powerful than any short-term praise, because it outlives you. Likability dies the moment people's emotions change. Legacy lives every time your ideas echo through someone else's actions. So what does this mean for you? It means you have to choose. You can spend your life trying to be liked, smoothing your edges, avoiding friction, blending in. Or you can choose to be real, to be consistent, to be feared if that's what it takes to stand firm. Because fear, in the right measure, is not violence, it's gravity. It keeps the structure intact when everything else wants to collapse. And there's a deeper kind of love, one that isn't soft or sentimental, but rooted in respect. It's the love that follows fear. The love that comes when people realize your strength isn't cruelty, it's conviction. That your boundaries aren't walls, they're foundations. That your refusal to be liked at all costs is what makes you trustworthy when the stakes are high. So I'll leave you with this. What do you want more, approval or impact? You probably can't have both, at least not all the time. You can chase applause, or you can build something that outlasts it. You can be the favorite of the moment, or the architect of something that endures. The world doesn't need more people who play nice. It needs people who play true, even if that means being feared before they are loved. Because in the end, it is better to be feared than loved if that fear is earned through principle, through strength, through unshakable self-mastery. And that kind of fear doesn't destroy. It clarifies. It protects. It builds. And when paired with wisdom, it can create something far greater than affection ever could, a life that matters.